Welcome to the Change Within podcast. My name is Gerard Uselli, and we are on episode 64 of the Essential series, dedicating this series to all essential workers who have really put themselves out there through the instances of the pandemic. And this person I have here today is no exception to the rule. I want to welcome you to somebody who worked within the residence facilities all throughout Staten Island, has a big imprint as far as doing what she has to do for so many individuals with disabilities. Her name is JaneMarie McCue. Jane, how are you today?
I'm good, Jerry. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I wanted to ask something that I've always asked in the first question for all of my guests on this one is, do you feel like you would be doing what you're doing now as far as like in a residence? Do you think that was the path that you've always wanted to be on?
Absolutely not. It was not on my radar to do. It was something that I kind of just fell into. It was started off as a part-time job when I was in college, fell in love with it, and stayed now 16 years with the same agency that I work for. The reason I did get into it in the beginning is many people don't know. I have an older brother who has autism, who's also involved with the organization that I work for. He's lived in a group home for a long time. So it was something I knew about, wasn't on the radar, and just something I fell into and fell in love with and been there since.
I think as far as having a sibling who does have a disability, it does, because I've known people who also have that scenario as well. The strengthening of the bonds between those two or whatever that family dynamic is compared to others, it really showcases the sense of being there for each other. And I'm sure that lays down the testament towards you and your brother at that point as well.
It does, because I see differently now, especially now that I'm older, the difference in how much he's grown since living in one of the facilities. So I felt like this was a way I can give back to other people also. So
100% on that. And kind of to follow through with my next question is, what was your first perception of the term disabled, and how has that changed over time since you went into the field?
So my thought process of being around people with disabilities, I was always so young. So I always just assumed people with disabilities, they were kind of just like my brother. And that was it. And then once I got into the field and really saw all the vast majority of all the differences, no two people were ever the same that I ran into. Some may have a couple of things the same. They may have some of the same stims and stuff like that, but nobody was ever the same. And it really opened up my eyes on how you can go from one extreme to the other with disabilities and how they act and how they function. And it was just a total eye-opening going into the residences.
I think it also goes to the fact, and in embracing this as well, especially as I can imagine working in a residence, you really get the whole spectrum as far as lifestyle. And knowing in that case, there is not one person in that type of living circumstance that is the same.
Yeah, of course, like you see a lot of people with autism. Autism goes from one extreme to another. I always thought younger, a little immature, autism was just autism. Now I've met people where autism is they have an obsession on something, or their brain just functions so differently. There's never been two people that I've ever met that are like, oh, that's a disability. It's everyone's their own person. And it's so crazy to see when you're in such a big field, the differences and how the differences come between each person. And sometimes you're like, oh, wow, that reminds me of so-and-so. And then it'll totally change. So it's very big.
Definitely on that. And kind of to consolidate that 16 years of experience in where you're working, what do you think is the most rewarding thing about your job?
The most rewarding thing I would have to say is just when you see the individuals that we work with, the small things that make them happy, the connections that you make. I have one individual I work with now. He's convinced I'm his family. It's so rewarding to see that he cares about you just as much as you care about them. He's the type of person where if I'm not to work at a certain time, he's calling my cell phone to make sure I'm okay and nothing happened. He'll even say like, oh, Jane, are you in your car? You're okay? You're on your way? Yeah, don't worry, pal. I'll be there in a few minutes. Oh, I was so worried about you. Like, it's just rewarding to see like that what you're doing makes a difference in their life. Or even some people, like I've worked with, they call lower functioning, where they may not be able to do something, but repeating it over and over, and you make the connection with them, and they're able to then do it one day on their own. It's like you've showed them something. You've accomplished what you wanted to do for these people. So it's little things like that that will randomly pop up that you're like, wow, that's what I worked on for so long. Could take years, it could take a week, but it's just so rewarding to see the connection that you can make with them, and how much they do depends on you and how much they learn from you.
I also believe that, alluding to my next question, especially as someone who's a substitute teacher currently and has been in a lot of settings just within a span of 6 months, something that, whether you are able or disabled in this way, this is one thing that we have in common.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're off your routine, it will always put an alter throughout your day, and it will give you a different set of a mood to be in, no matter how you try to adapt, or even in that case, kind of just defy it based on how people can be. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my question to you is, based on how your living facilities that you work in, how do you think the individuals have been in going through the pandemic?
So I've seen two very extremes. I've seen some individuals who they struggle. They're off their routine. Unfortunately, a lot of them are still off their routine. The day programs aren't all fully open, and you see they're struggling. They're struggling to find what they're supposed to do, because they're so used to how many years they've been going that it's the same thing. They go do this, they go do that. They have their lunch break. It's so regimented, and now they're home, and some of them are really struggling, and they don't have the connection with the people that they used to have. And then I've seen on the other side, some of them have thrived. There's an individual I work with. He came out of his shell. He was so quiet, so shy, and being around the same people every single day and in a more comfortable setting, he's thrived so much. He's coming out of his shell. He's expressing himself, tells you what he wants, what he likes, what he doesn't like. Where a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, you would ask him what he likes. Oh, I don't know. That's fine. Everything was fine. Everything was yes. Now, what would you like to do? I would like to go here and do this. So he has thrived. Other ones, they struggle because they don't have that regiment, and you try to follow it as much as you can and recreate what they had. It's impossible. It's instilled in them for years, and they like the routine. Even like some, like I do a backup program, because with everything going on with COVID, sometimes the school, the traffic, everything's in and out. The van is 5 minutes late. It throws their whole day because they're not expecting it. Even still, you see like the struggling with like, okay, guys, we're going out. Remember your mask. Well, I never had to wear a mask. Well, we live someplace different now, and this is what we got to do. Even something as small as that is thrown them. So you've seen two differences. You've seen the struggle, and then you've seen some people that have thrived. And I've seen other people that have thrived during this time too, which is great for them, unfortunately, that it took something like this for them to really show who they are.
Yes, and to that understanding as well, it does define society as far as how they've had the opposite end of effects as far as adapting towards the pandemic. Some people rise to the occasion. Some people, unfortunately, don't do as well in those circumstances. So in that sense, kind of to put it to your reflection as an employee, like, how do you think your job has changed? And if not, do you wish that it kind of did based on how the pandemic has been?
I feel like my job totally changed. During the beginning of the pandemic, I was actually not at work for the first couple of weeks. I was doing some personal stuff at home. It just wound up happening at the same time. So when I went back, it was a completely different place I walked into. I felt it was, you had to find the structure that they needed. You had to find things to keep them occupied and keep them not nervous, because they understood what was going on, but they couldn't fully understand what was going on. And you would have to explain daily, like, this is what's going on in the world. and we want to keep you safe. And it would, you would see the understanding, but then you would see it jump back to where it was, where, well, I don't understand. I want to go back to see my friends. Or you would see a family member that would come by and have to stand outside and explain to them why they couldn't. So you really became someone that they depended on, and it was more than they've ever needed, because they were used to having their own thing, their own routine. And now you and them are thrown into unknown, where you're trying to structure them and structure everything for them throughout the day, where it's like, all right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it was just trying to keep them calm and understanding. And you really have to think about how you're going to keep them safe, because they can't understand fully how to keep themselves safe. So it was like a new staff came in. Come on, guys, we got to clean up. We got to sanitize everything. Oh, why are we cleaning again? Because we want to keep you safe. So you had so much going on that you had to think about to make sure that they were okay. Which was, we always make sure they're okay, but now it's just intensified, because you don't know, because in the residence you have people coming in and out. So you had to explain to them, like, okay, well, don't get too close to the person that just came into work, because we don't know. And it was just a lot, especially in the beginning when everything was so unknown. It was like a whirlwind of what we had to do to keep them safe and occupied and mentally safe, because it's a lot on them to try to understand, and mentally it's a lot.
Absolutely. And from that point, like, so you kind of explained this from before as well with one of your examples, but I kind of wanted to get a little bit more of a general overview on this too. Like, have you witnessed individuals become their own leaders from you managing their residents? Do you feel like the footprint of what you do in your job has had a follow-up effect in how a lot of individuals find the leadership in themselves?
I do. I work with a really great team. I'm the manager of the residence. I have an assistant manager who's great also. She's such a great girl. And when we came in, we felt like we wanted to kind of take them and kind of push them to find their own, because we say to them all the time, you're an adult. I want you to think about how you want to do this, how you want to go about this. Sometimes they'll say to you, well, I got to call my mom and say, no, you can make this decision. Let's get here and make this decision on your own. Take a few minutes, think about it. That was always my approach, that I want to treat them as I would want to be treated as an adult. At the end of the day, they're no different. They're adults. They should act like adults, be treated like adults, make adult decisions that they can. And I feel like a lot of them have grown from that, because a lot of them depended on their parents to make answers, you to make answers. And now it's, well, what do you want to do? You decide, and then we'll tell mom and dad what you decided. Like, this is up to you to do. And I think a lot of them have grown from that, because they can see that they can do this on their own and they can depend on themselves, and they don't need that extra support. Maybe sometimes they need a little, like, someone to be in their corner and be like, yeah, like, that's great. Like, that was a great decision that you made. Or if it's not great, well, why don't you think about it for a few minutes? So I think that's something like I brought to the table that was great, because you see them grow and be more on their own and make their own decisions. And even simple things like, what do you guys want to do for lunch? Oh, what could we have for lunch? No, you decide what you want for lunch. Like, you're able to do this. And a lot of them are around our age range, and it's like, well, this is what I do, so why can't you do it? Or especially too, sometimes with relationships, they'll ask, and I'm like, well, this is what I would tell my friend. I feel like that helps them a lot, because it makes them feel like they're important and they're on the same level, and you're kind of like a friend to them and they can trust you, and it really works so great.
I think it also adds to the core element, whether positive, and I'm not going to say negative, but more of a transparent reinforcement. I think reinforcement in the sense of capacity, as far as who you're working with, whether it's individuals within the homes themselves, whether it's your own staff, or even within your own personal life. Like, it really dictates the importance of, we all ask the questions to ourselves, are you sure? And that's a very important question to ask. And it does take a lot of times people to be in that corner. So it's a very humanistic approach as far as how you're doing a lot of these things.
Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you could see they second guess themselves. And I feel like if we're there to help support that decision that they're making and say, yeah, that's great, let's do it. It builds up their confidence, which they need, because a lot of them don't have the confidence, because some of them.
Now, my final question to you is, and this is something in reflection of our conversation, also going into the fact that it has been something I've asked all of the other essential workers I've had on this platform, and that is, how can being a residence manager be more essential than it already is?
uh, More essential, I don't think it possibly could. um, so the facility is 24 hours a day. You don't, it never closes. So these people, this is their home. This is where they'll live forever, or if they move to an apartment where they can live on their own. But for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're there making sure they're okay. So as a manager, I have to make sure that there's staff there with them every day. They have their essentials that they need every day. Something, God forbid, an emergency accident happens, I'm getting a phone call. You're on call 24 hours a day, holidays. I don't think it could ever become any more essential. There's even times before COVID, the Christmas before COVID and the Thanksgiving before, one of my residents came home with me. He came and spent Christmas and Thanksgiving with me. And I was still working with him. I enjoyed it. I loved having him here. He was great. He was like family, but you still have that connection of work that when he was around. He's gone to my assistant's house for Christmas Eve. You're there all the time. There's been times I've gotten phone calls 4 a.m. There's been times you get calls 12 o'clock at night. Someone didn't come in and you're getting dressed and going. It to a point, your life kind of revolves around it because you're taking care of these people and they're your priority, and they're always going to be your priority while you're a manager of a residence. And it's great because you benefit so much, but it does get stressful because you don't get that full break. There's times, obviously, you go on vacation and stuff like that, but there's been times I've been in Italy and France getting calls like, hey, just want to let you know this is going on. So essential, it's essential. I don't think anything could ever change to make it more, because it's a 24/7 job. It is. You may get a couple of hours a day or two a break, but you never know what's going to happen. Like even now, I left a little while ago. 5 minutes from now, I can get a call. Hey, guess what? This happened. And it's just, you drop what you do and you go.
I think that last sentence you just said defines what essentiality is. And of course, as society moves forward into the future, as more developments in technology, in any sort of intelligence, just going forward that way, we're a more research society as things go forward. So you never know what boundaries could be pushed to a new height. So I feel like that's the essence as far as asking that final question, because who knows what the future is going to be. And it could be a very engaging way as far as how we look back on these types of things and be like, wow, we were at point A. I can't believe we got to point G at this point. And it's kind of crazy. But nonetheless, that was my little rant. That was the fourth episode for the Essential series of the Change Within podcast. And for those who want to check us out but have never had the chance to, you can do so on Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Jane, thank you very much for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Jerry. This was great.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.